Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most incredible stories from recent history, a moment that truly felt like the end of an era, the capture of Saddam Hussein, an event codenamed by American forces as the Spider's End. Imagine this. It's a cold, tense night in December 2003, deep in the quiet farmlands near Tikrit, Iraq, a place not far from the dusty village of Ad-Dor. American forces are gearing up for one of the most secret and highly anticipated missions of the entire Iraq War. For months, Saddam Hussein, the once feared dictator, who deruled Iraq with an iron fist for nearly a quarter of a century, had completely vanished. He'd evaded capture, a ghost in his own devastated country. The man who once lived in lavish palaces and commanded huge armies was now hiding in the shadows. The operation to find him was called Operation Red Dawn, a name that surprisingly came from a 1984 American movie about resistance fighters. The two target sites were even called Wolverine 1 and Wolverine 2. The irony was not lost on the soldiers. They were hunting a man who had himself once commanded a regime built on fear and resistance. For what felt like an eternity, the United States military and intelligence agencies had been chasing leads, whispers from villagers, secret informants, captured loyalists from Saddam's inner circle. But every single trail went cold. Saddam was a master of secrecy. Even during his reign, he'd unpredictably moved between palaces, sleeping in different spots each night, trusting absolutely no one. After Baghdad fell in April 2003, he just disappeared like smoke in the desert wind. The search for Saddam became more than just a military objective. It was a psychological war. His continued freedom fueled the insurgency. Many Iraqis genuinely believed he would return, that he was still orchestrating resistance against the U.S. forces. Every false sighting, every rumor, gave hope to his supporters and instilled fear in those who had suffered so much under his brutal regime. For the coalition, finding him, whether alive or dead, became essential not only for justice but for bringing some semblance of stability to the fractured nation. Then, by early December 2003, after months of dead ends, U.S. intelligence finally caught a break. They received credible information from a trusted source, a member of Saddam's extended family. This informant hinted that Saddam might be hiding near his hometown of Al-Ajah, just outside Tikrit, in a small rural area surrounded by orchards and mud huts. The lead specifically pointed to two possible hiding spots near the Tigris River. The pieces were finally falling into place. On the night of December 13, 2003, the plan was set in motion. Members of the U.S. 1st Brigade of the 4th Infantry Division, supported by Task Force 121, a highly covert special operations group, moved into position. Helicopters quietly hovered in the distance. The mission was planned with absolute secrecy. Even among the troops on the ground, only a select few knew the true, monumental target. They surrounded the farmhouse quietly, the only sound the rustle of the cold desert wind. At first there was nothing, just silence. Soldiers swept through the property, eventually finding two men, later identified as Saddam's close aides. They offered little resistance, but one of them, after some intense interrogation, pointed towards a small, seemingly insignificant hut nearby. Behind it, buried beneath a patch of earth and bricks, was a narrow opening. When the soldiers lifted the crude cover, a faint movement stirred beneath the ground. The air was heavy with dust and the unmistakable smell of soil. A man's voice, weak and almost a whisper, echoed in Arabic, "Don't shoot." Slowly, from the dark, confined hole, emerged a disheveled figure. He had a long, unkempt beard. His hair was matted, and his clothes were filthy. His eyes blinked against the harsh, unexpected light of the soldiers' torches. It was him. It was Saddam Hussein. For a moment, the soldiers stood stunned. The dictator who once ruled 25 million people, who had defied the world and plunged his nation into devastating wars, was now a bearded, trembling man pulled from a literal hole in the ground. His hiding place was later described as a spider hole, a tiny underground bunker barely large enough for one person. It was equipped with only a small fan, a vent pipe, and a few pathetic supplies, a pistol, some cash, and a few chocolate bars. Saddam offered no resistance. When the soldiers searched him, they found a pistol holstered at his side, but he never even reached for it. His first words, after being pulled from that grim hole, were chillingly calm. "I am Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq, and I want to negotiate." But there was no negotiation to be had. He was placed under arrest immediately. As news spread through the camp, cheers erupted. For many of the soldiers, this was an incredible moment of triumph, the culmination of months of hardship, fear, and danger. Yet for others, it was truly surreal. The image of Saddam, broken, frail, and silent, was a world away from the fire-breathing dictator they had seen in propaganda videos. The Lion of Baghdad, as he was once known, had been reduced to a frightened fugitive in hiding, caught not in a lavish palace, but in a dirt pit. In Baghdad, the news reached coalition headquarters at dawn. U.S. Administrator Paul Bremer appeared before the cameras and made the now famous announcement to the world. "Ladies and gentlemen, we got him." Those words echoed across Iraq and around the globe. Crowds in some parts of Baghdad immediately celebrated in the streets, firing guns into the air in jubilation. Others watched in disbelief. the weight of history settling upon them. For Iraqis who had lived under Saddam's brutal rule, through wars, sanctions, and unspeakable repression, it truly felt like the end of an era, a final chapter. But even in his capture, Saddam remained defiantly himself. During his interrogation, he steadfastly refused to admit any wrongdoing. He spoke calmly, often arrogantly, asserting that he was still the rightful leader of Iraq. He denied all knowledge of the atrocities committed under his regime, the horrific massacres, the use of chemical weapons, the brutal suppression of dissent. His captors described him as proud but broken, a man living in complete denial of his dramatic fall. When footage of his capture was shown to Iraqis, the reactions were a mix of profound relief and deep disbelief. Some were moved to tears, instantly recalling family members lost to Saddam's secret police or to his devastating wars. Others, however, feared what would come next. The looming power vacuum, the escalating insurgency, the potential for revenge killings. Indeed, the months following his capture would see Iraq descend into even deeper chaos. The dictator was gone, but the shadow of his rule still lingered powerfully over the nation. Saddam's trial began in 2005, broadcast worldwide. For many Iraqis, it was their very first glimpse of the man facing justice. Gone were the military uniforms and the bombastic speeches from gilded palaces. Instead, he sat behind bars, in a dark suit, listening as witnesses recounted the horrors of his regime. He remained defiant to the very end, often shouting at the judges and dismissing the court's legitimacy. But history, in a way, had already delivered its verdict. In December 2006, exactly 3 years to the day after his capture, Saddam Hussein was executed by hanging. His death was swift, but incredibly controversial. A grim moment captured in shaky leaked footage that would circulate across the world, becoming another part of history. Some saw it as justice finally served. Others saw it as the tragic symbol of a nation torn apart, still grappling with its past. Looking back, the capture of Saddam Hussein stands as one of the defining moments of the early 21st century, a moment that marked both the definitive end of a long dictatorship and the beginning of a new, incredibly uncertain chapter for Iraq. It revealed the profound paradox of power, how a man who once ruled through fear and brutal force could ultimately be found cowering underground, alone and forgotten. For historians, it was more than just the fall of a leader, it was the collapse of an illusion. Saddam Hussein's capture exposed the ultimate fragility of absolute power and the inevitable fate of tyranny. In the end, he wasn't brought down by foreign armies alone, but ironically, by the very same isolation and mistrust that had once kept him so firmly in power. In a silent corner of Iraq, the spider hole still remains a grim reminder of how empires, no matter how mighty or how terrifying, can eventually fall into the dust. What an incredible story, right? It really makes you think about power, history, and the human condition. If you found this dive into history as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Your support means everything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.